Buenos días, vecinos. Un nuevo mes en el hoyo.
Imagine a prison with 333 floors, where food is stored at the top, and by the time it reaches the bottom, only crumbs remain. This is the Platform 2, where survival isn't just about food, it's about following bizarre rules and facing brutal punishment if you break them. Today, we're going to unravel all the twisted symbols, the meanings, and shocking moments of the Platform 2. And believe me, this is a spoiler-packed ride. So if you're ready to uncover the secrets of this vertical hell, hit that like button and let's jump right in.
Our journey into the Platform 2 starts with Zamiatin, one of the latest unlucky prisoners entering the Vertical Self-Management Center. This isn't your ordinary prison. We're talking 333 floors of despair where you're only allowed one meal a day. That rhymed, I guess. Not sure. Okay. And even that depends on how much the people above leave for you. Each new prisoner is asked to bring their favorite meal and one personal item. Zamiatin, a big no-nonsense guy, chooses pizza as his favorite meal and a lighter as his personal item. But this isn't just some random name or food preference. So let's see what director did here. Zamiatin is actually named after a Russian writer who famously turned against Soviet Union ideals when he saw their flaws. This writer, Zamiatin, wrote a book called We, and this book was about a very harsh government that even told the people that all the houses and buildings need to be built from glass so that they can check their lives every day. So, some other people also say that George Orwell's 1984 book was also actually written after the book of Zamiatin, We. Okay, let's get back to the story. So, his choice of pizza symbolizes his deep desire for comfort and order in a place that's about to challenge every one of his values. Dedication to pizza. Imagine being so serious about your toppings that you're willing to burn down your house if the cheese isn't right. Now that's a red flag.
Scene 2. Meeting Perempuan and the rigid rules of the pit. Once inside, Zamiatin meets his cellmate, Perempuan, on level 24. Her name literally means woman in Malay language, and she has a nurturing side that clashes with the prison's harshness. Together, they have to navigate the pit's rules. Each prisoner is only allowed to eat their own chosen meal, or they can trade if they're lucky. Anyone who breaks this rule is labeled the barbarian and faces punishment from the self-righteous enforcers known as the Loyalists. Perempuan tries to reason with Zamiatin to follow these strange rules, but Zamiatin isn't exactly thrilled about his limited menu options, especially when someone from above has already picked up the toppings on his pizza. So Perempuan's role as a nurturing figure and Zamiatin's immediate pushback symbolize the internal conflict between empathy and resistance. As they struggle against the prison's ridiculous restrictions, they mirror the tension in every society between following the rules and pushing back when they make no sense. So, Zamiatin's sitting there, furious about his sad, toppingless pizza slice, wondering why he has to follow the rules when no one's enforcing them on the levels above. This guy's definitely not a team player. Scene 3. Robespierre. The blind loyalty of the enforcers. So, Robespierre, a loyalist from level 23, explained the system, claiming it ensures fair food distribution. However, things quickly spiral out of control when prisoners from higher levels take food meant for those below. Violence erupts, leading to injuries and deaths. Perempuan and Robespierre fight to defend their level.
Amid the chaos, they hear about the Master, or the Messiah, a mythical figure who allegedly survived a month without food through meditation, then sacrificed his leg to feed those on the lowest levels. His followers, the Anointed ones, they're called, preach his message of solidarity. His name is a direct reference to Robespierre, the infamous leader during the French Revolution, who, after leading a brutal reign of terror, was ultimately executed by the very revolutionaries he led. This is a clever nod to how loyalists can become blind to the very causes they fight for, eventually becoming victims of their own violence. Spear's character embodies that hypocrisy. Someone who blindly follows the system even as it consumes himself. So, Robespierre's name and fate mirror the tragic irony of revolutionaries who, in their zeal to uphold justice, end up perpetuating the same evils they set out to destroy. Scene 4. The food distribution rules and the law. Zamiatin quickly learns that this isn't a grab-what-you-can situation. There is a strict set of self-imposed laws called the law, and the Loyalists enforce it ruthlessly. If anyone breaks the law, they're cast as barbarians and probably killed, I'm not sure. Zamiatin and Perempuan soon find themselves at odds with both the barbarians, who take whatever they can get, and the Loyalists, who see themselves as defenders of this twisted system. The prison's setup and the food distribution rules are clear metaphors for power and control. Like historical systems that claim to enforce equality, this system forces people to fight over resources, and ironically, it only makes life harder for everyone. Zamiatin's growing frustration with these rules represents the dissatisfaction that often leads to rebellion. So imagine a potluck where everyone fights over leftovers, and anyone who dares touch the lasagna is branded a barbarian. Welcome to Platform 2, guys.
Scene 5. Dogging Babi, the Anointed Ones, and their brutal punishments. The plot thickens with the introduction of Dogging Babi, one of the Anointed Ones and a loyal enforcer of the law. Now, Dogging Babi might sound like a funny name, but it's actually a reference to a famous Indonesian pork dish that's popular with tourists yet banned by the local religious majority. Since in Indonesia, as you know, I think 90% of the people are Muslims, and so pork meat is some kind of, it's lawless, or I don't know what they call it. So this food-based irony reflects Bobby's role in the prison, a brutal enforcer loved and feared by everyone. Bobby's punishments are severe, and he'll go to any length to enforce the law. Soon, he sets his sights on Zamiatin, whose rebellious spirit is already causing friction. So Bobby represents the hypocrisy of power, like the way certain dictatorships outlaw things while keeping them accessible for a select few. By forcing others to submit while indulging in power himself, Bobby embodies the corrupt nature of authoritarian rule. Scene 6. Zamiatin's existential crisis and the square root of -1. As the prison's insanity deepens, Zamiatin shares a personal anecdote. As a mathematician, he used to obsess over the square root of -1, an imaginary number that represents nothingness. So let's just suppose you use the square root of -1 in an equation, and then you expect the outcome to be a real number. I mean, something that really exists. How can you use a number that does not exist in an equation to get an outcome of a number that could be real? So, interestingly, to Zamiatin, this number is a symbol of the prison's emptiness, an endless set of rules built on a meaningless foundation. He questions the entire concept of justice here, which seems as arbitrary as an imaginary number in math. So, I think the director is trying to say that just as the number, the square root of -1, justice, morality, and equity are concepts that are like non-existent. Why? Because they are social constructs. And based on the concept of social constructivism, people and societies constructed these terms, and so these terms are not real and they do not exist. We make meaning for these terms, right? So the square root of -1 symbolizes the hollowness of abstract ideals like justice, morality, and order in a place like the pit. These ideals are based on belief, not reality, showing us that justice in the pit is just as imaginary. So only in the Platform 2 can you go from pizza complaints to an existential breakdown over math. Chapter 7. Perempuan's art and her struggle with guilt. Flashbacks reveal Perempuan's haunting past as an artist whose works were designed to provoke. One of her sculptures, a dog with sharp claws, very sharp ones, ended up tragically killing a child who stumbled into it. This piece was meant to critique the darker side of society, but it only brought her personal suffering. Now, her time in the prison mirrors her art as she struggles to reconcile her guilt and find meaning. Perempuan's sculpture and guilt represent the way society often punishes those who challenge the status quo. Just like her art, her role in the prison is as a victim of circumstances beyond her control. Chapter 8. The Master, His Anointed Ones, and Zamiatin's Skepticism. The prison's law comes from a legendary figure called the Master, who supposedly survived without food by sacrificing parts of his own flesh to feed others. His followers, the Anointed Ones, enforce his teachings. While most see the Master as a savior, Zamiatin is skeptical, viewing him as a symbol of the system's absurdity and self-destruction. The Master represents how systems of power can twist noble ideals into methods of control. His story of sacrifice becomes an excuse for brutality, as the Anointed Ones continue his legacy with violence instead of compassion. Chapter 9. The Head Falling from the Upper Levels, a Sign of Fate. In one particularly haunting moment, a head falls from the upper levels, a gruesome reminder of the fate that awaits the prisoners. Zamiatin realizes that he broke the rules, since he actually ate some food from someone who died. He broke some rules there. So in the pit, the system is ruthless. When someone breaks the rules, their punishment doesn't just affect them, their cellmate suffers too, meaning Perempuan. The head falling is a symbolic of the brutal consequences that await them. Fate is coming for them all. So this head symbolizes the inevitability of punishment in the system. Not only do those who make mistakes get punished, but their actions ripple through to others, making survival in the pit even more perilous. The falling head represents the ever-present threat of punishment in an unforgiving system, how one person's mistake can lead to the destruction of many. At the beginning of the Platform 2, we're introduced to Perempuan and Zamiatin, both of whom are thrown into the hellish vertical prison. Their initial reasons for being there remain shrouded in mystery, but as this story progresses, we begin to uncover the truth behind their incarcerations. Both characters, starting from one of the upper levels, struggle to adapt to the harsh food distribution system, especially Zamiatin, whose pizza keeps getting snatched by someone higher up. This really shows the cold brutality of the system, where survival isn't about rules, but about who's above you and who controls the resources. Zamiatin's tough exterior begins to crack as he struggles to adapt to the system's cruelty. Perempuan, on the other hand, keeps her distance, but their growing bond becomes critical to their survival. Just when they start to get comfortable with each other, their world is upended when they drop to one of the lower levels, where food is scarce, and their desperation starts to take a toll. This shift to the lower levels marks the point where both characters are forced to confront their past actions and the reasons they ended up in the pit. The transition from upper levels to lower levels symbolizes how quickly anyone's fortunes can change in an oppressive system. So, Zamiatin finally reaches his breaking point when Babi's Loyalists catch him breaking the law. To protect Perempuan, Zamiatin sacrifices himself in a literal blaze of glory, setting his blanket on fire and jumping into the shaft, plummeting to the bottom. His fall is as symbolic as it is tragic, representing the inevitable fate of those who dare challenge the system. Zamiatin's sacrifice is a dark twist on the concept of martyrdom, someone who sacrificed himself to make the people wake up and see what is really happening here. While he dies fighting against oppression, his death only reinforces the prison's cruelty, underscoring the hopelessness faced by anyone who tries to change the system.
So here we have Zamiatin, proving once and for all that pizza, prison politics, and martyrdom are a dangerous mix and they can exist together. Interesting. Chapter 11. Zamiatin's criminal past and his struggle with his identity. Zamiatin's backstory begins to unravel through snippets of his interview with the authority. He claims he ended up in the pit after burning down his parents' house, a desperate act, a call for attention. He carries a lighter to the prison, a symbol probably of his twisted self-image, thinking he's a tough guy. But as the film goes on, it becomes clear that Zamiatin's story doesn't hold water. His facade slowly breaks down when he has to face the defaulters in prison. Unlike Perempuan, who at least tries to confront the challenges head-on, Zamiatin cowers in fear, resorting to violence only when the odds are in his favor. Zamiatin's breakdown is central to his character arc. He's built up this mythos around himself, but his behavior reveals the cracks in his psyche. It's revealed that his parents didn't just abandon him, his parents sent him to the prison in an attempt to teach him discipline, which adds layers to his complex psychological state. So Zamiatin's obsession with imaginary numbers and the square root of -1 illustrates his belief that life itself is just an illusion, a concept that mirrors his own internal emptiness. So this is another understanding of this number. We are not sure which one director is pointing at there. Chapter 12. Perempuan's guilt and the truth behind her sentence. Perempuan's backstory is equally harrowing. She's an artist who created a sculpture of a dog with sharp, deadly claws. Her boyfriend's son tragically fell onto one of these spikes and died. Rather than owning up to her role in the accident, she hired the best lawyers to cover up her crime and sold this sculpture for a massive profit. Yet, despite evading legal consequences, Perempuan is weighed down by guilt. The prison becomes her personal purgatory, a place where she must confront her actions before she can find any peace. It's revealed towards the end that Perempuan was responsible for her boyfriend's son's death. Her conscience weighs heavily on her, even though the material success she achieved through this tragedy initially brought her happiness. In the end, her redemption comes when she saves an innocent child. We will get to it later on, symbolizing her attempt to atone for her sins. So, her fall from the high levels and her struggle with guilt highlights the prison as a purgatory. The deeper she goes, the closer she comes to confronting her past, culminating in her redemption when she helps a child at the lowest level. We'll get to it later. Chapter 13. The New Level. Perempuan wakes up in a new level, 51, with a new cellmate named Sahabat, because now the pizza guy is already dead, okay? So this level feels much better than the ones below, and Sahabat is curious about how things work. Perempuan shows her the ropes, explaining the platform system and the rules about food. Sahabat looks down the shaft in horror, but quickly snaps out of it when Perempuan reassures her. Sahabat's choice of food is plums, and Perempuan can't believe it. She's horrified by the choice, but decides to play along. Perempuan keeps a lighter from her previous cellmate, Zamiatin, who set himself on fire, I just told you a few minutes ago, right? As part of his protest, Sahabat notices and they prepare for the arrival of the platform. It's bad news. A newcomer refused to follow the rules, but there's hope. An anointed one is above them, so the issue might be resolved quickly. Chapter 14. A violent encounter. The platform arrives, and the food that Sahabat chose, plums, is desecrated. She's furious, refusing to eat anything. Meanwhile, a barbarian on level 54 is causing problems. He pretends to be a loyalist, but it's clear that he's not. He was once on level 2 and ate like a pig every day, throwing up afterwards. Perempuan and Sahabat discuss how they can help, but according to the rules, people on the level above should take care of it. Perempuan vents about how these rules are killing people. The platform arrives again, and a confrontation begins. The barbarian fights back, injuring people, but ultimately he's overpowered and Perempuan unleashes her fury and he pleads for mercy, claiming that he's only taken what he needed to survive. As the platform moves again, Perempuan realizes the true cost of living in this place. The barbarian justification, that he said he only took what he needed, becomes an indictment of the twisted moral compass that forms in such environments. In a system where everyone is scrambling to survive, the very concept of right and wrong becomes meaningless, replaced by the brutal logic of what's necessary to stay alive. This is a reflection of societies where people are forced into survival mode at the expense of their humanity, perpetuating cycles of violence and self-preservation. Chapter 17. The Chaos of Revolution. So Perempuan wants to rebel against the Loyalists, so she prepares her own group, and she gathers her own group, okay? Perempuan and her new group of rebels are full of lofty ideals. They chant about freedom, and next thing you know, they're throwing food at anyone who won't join them in their chaotic revolution. They're so hyped, you'd think they were at a Black Friday sale instead of starting a movement. They crash through to a lower level and declare it their new home. And the guy with the glasses, the optimist, says, as free men and women, we will stay here. Okay, I'm sure nothing bad will happen. Okay, they find a painting brought by one of the ladies, and surprise, it's a dog from her house, which she was searching for. So what is the message? The painting of the drowning dog featured in the original Netflix sci-fi movie as well was created by a Spanish artist, Francisco de Goya, referred to as the dog, or Spanish el perro, if I'm pronouncing this right. The painting is often interpreted as a man's struggle against evil forces. So they say that de Goya wanted to paint disappointment, and then he actually created this painting. In the Platform 2, the painting seemingly represents Perempuan's journey, where each new obstacle is greater than the last after she refuses to take accountability for her actions in the real world. Therefore, when she swallows the painting, she takes responsibility for her past actions and accepts the suffering that comes with them. With this, she experiences a certain death that leads her to the path of redemption and self-forgiveness. Since almost every character arrives in the pit to seek redemption or grapple with their shortcomings, the setting can be seen as a representation of the biblical Tower of Babel. So, but what is Tower of Babel? Okay, the pit itself can be seen as a modern interpretation of the biblical Tower of Babel. In the Bible, the Tower of Babel was a symbol of human ambition and pride, where people tried to build a tower that reached the heavens. God, seeing the arrogance of this attempt, actually confounded their languages so that they could no longer understand each other, scattering them across the earth. In the same way, the pit in this story of the Platform 2 can be seen as a symbol of human suffering and downfall, a place where people, despite their attempts to climb and rise above, are trapped in an endless cycle of a struggle, confusion, and isolation. The characters in the pit, much like the people in Babel, are trying to rise or escape, but they are limited by their own flaws, desperation, and misunderstandings. The pit becomes a place where people grapple with their own shortcomings and seek redemption, just as the Tower of Babel was a place where humanity's pride and ambition ultimately led to their downfall. So this scene shows how easily idealism can slip into chaos when there's no real leadership. The revolution, full of lofty ideals, is quickly derailed when selfishness and anarchy take over. It's a reflection of any political uprising that starts with passion but forgets the purpose. Without control, even the best ideas will self-destruct. Just like the scene with the children, that they wanted to have fun with this slider, but they got into a conflict to reach the peak of the pyramid. Chapter 18. Perempuan's transformation from loyalist to rebel. We already talked about this revolution thing, but let's see how this transformation happened to Perempuan. At the start, Perempuan seems like one of the loyalists, trying to keep the peace and convince Zamiatin to follow the prison's rules. But as time passes, her own inner conflict grows, and she begins to question the system's inherent injustice. By the end of the movie, she's become a full-blown rebel. This shift shows us the evolution of her character, how a person faced with overwhelming guilt and injustice can go from being a follower to a revolutionary person. So the film uses her journey to give viewers a taste of both sides. I mean, the director did this job perfectly. So here, the viewers get a taste of both sides of the ideological spectrum, expertly pulling us in as we empathize with her transformation in both sides. You want to call it the capitalist side or the socialist side, or some people say the communist side or the socialist side. Okay, so Perempuan's transformation highlights the human capacity for change, showing that even the most rigid system can break down when people confront it with their own moral truths. Chapter 19, the plan for starvation. So, as things spiral, Dogin, the guy we talked about, a very strict guy, the leader, devises a plan to starve out the rebels on the lower levels. He has decided to deprive them of food for a whole month. And, a peaceful revolution is never possible, so that's a reality. And, of course, he has the brilliant realization that his followers will starve too. But it's all about the law, right? So, like any good leader, he insists it's for the greater good. So do it, guys, do it. Because, of course, starvation is actually the only way to unite people as well. So in this scene, you can see that it is actually highlighting the corrupting influence of power, even in a supposed free society. It is a metaphor for political systems where leaders sacrifice the masses to preserve their own power. The deeper message here is that those in power will manipulate their followers into enduring suffering, all while justify it as a necessary evil. Chapter 20, the final escape. Perempuan is fed up with the brutal game and decides it's time to act. She thinks, if I swallow a piece of this painting, I'll poison myself enough to fake my death. Because of course, eating toxic ink is the foolproof way to play dead in a place full of cannibals. Yeah, that's the right thing to do. So she prepares to make her move and asks if Tree McGussie is coming with her. But he's too busy living his best life, right? With a lot of dead bodies there to eat, I think. Apparently surviving in this hellhole is the highlight of his existence. Perempuan isn't about to let that slow her down. She takes a deep breath, swallows the ink, and hopes it's enough to help her escape.
The final plan. I know that you're very tired, guys, listening to this video and this review, but stay with me, we have interesting things for you. Perempuan and Sahabat decide to take matters into their own hands. They wait for the platform to arrive again, and when it does, they're prepared to act. Perempuan grabs a metal piece as the platform reaches their level. Dogin and his minions arrive, and they are prepared to punish anyone who steps out of line. Perempuan and Sahabat try to defy him, but Dogin's very ruthless. As the platform moves, he grabs them and orders them to obey the law. No exceptions. He punishes the guy who tried to stop them, explaining that those who break the rules will be executed. He also plans to kill Perempuan for her defiance. As the platform moves down, Perempuan is strapped to it and left to be destroyed. Meanwhile, children are back to fighting for the chance to climb the pyramid, symbolizing the same twisted system of survival. The cycle continues with no escape in sight. So, this scene of children playing is shown at the same time that the battle is going on. So one of the most striking and symbolic scenes shows a group of children playing on a slide. At first, it's a simple game, but as the children try to climb to the top, they become increasingly aggressive, clawing at each other to reach the peak. This scene offers a stark metaphor for how dictatorships and socialist systems can be corrupted. While the supposed goal is to foster collective prosperity, the focus becomes less about the original objective and more about individual success. The children, once innocent, turn into selfish competitors. It's a powerful image of how people, even children, are driven by their own desires, showing that humans, by nature, are selfish. This slide and the children's action represent how, in the face of harsh rules, even the purest instincts of cooperation get twisted into selfishness. The scene critiques the idea of justice in societies where human nature is ultimately flawed, no matter how idealistic the system is supposed to be.
This final plan encapsulates the desperation of those who are pushed to the brink of survival. The system is unyielding, punishing anyone who dares to break the rules, no matter how just the cause. The children fighting for survival symbolize how, in an unequal society, the younger generation is left to fend for themselves, perpetuating the same broken cycle. The message here is clear. The fight for change is endless, but the cost of defiance is always high, and sometimes the best efforts can seem futile. Yet, it's the very defiance, no matter how brutal the outcome, that is a symbol of hope, even if that hope is fleeting. Chapter 21, The Test and the Choice. Perempuan faces an unimaginable test. She's dragged into a surreal red room where she's forced to make a horrific choice: kill a child she's been protecting or fail the test altogether. It's a classic moral dilemma. Do you hold onto your values or sacrifice them for the supposed greater good? Meaning that, are you going to betray the system? True to her character, Perempuan, the only one who still seems to have any sense of decency left in this hellhole, refuses to kill the child. But of course, choosing compassion over cruelty comes with a price. She's violently thrown back to the lower levels, her body broken, but her moral integrity intact. In this twisted world, that's something rare to hold onto, right? So this moment and even the visuals on the screen echoes a biblical reference, the Last Supper, where Perempuan may very well be playing the role of Judas. The person in the painting named Judah is notably absent. And in this scene, Perempuan's betrayal of the Messiah seems inevitable. Here, Messiah would be the system, I think, that the director wanted to depict. Just like Judah's famous betrayal, it's possible that the Perempuan's choices will ultimately lead her down the path of turning on the Messiah, and she actually did that, right? So this scene is about the ethical choices we make in life when pushed to our limits. In a broken system, making the right choice is often the hardest and most painful path. Perempuan's sacrifice reflects how we sometimes have to go against the odds to preserve our integrity, even when it doesn't seem to matter. Chapter 22, A New Beginning and the Final Revelation. After all the chaos, Perempuan wakes up in a strange room and surprise, Goreng, her ex, is there too. Confused? Yeah, so are we. Goreng seems to have been reincarnated or just mysteriously teleported into this bizarre prison dimension. In fact, we don't even know if they're really in the afterlife or stuck in an eternal cycle of suffering. And just when we think they might escape, Goreng's reunion with Perempuan raises even more questions. Like, wait, was he her ex all along, or are they both dead now? Is this purgatory? And seriously, what is going on? What the hell is going on, guys? I'm not sure even myself. But I think this scene explores the idea that we may be trapped in a system beyond our comprehension, and that redemption may never come. It raises existential questions about identity, time, and the nature of suffering. The revelation that Perempuan and Goreng are somehow intertwined with the system suggests that no matter how hard you try to escape, you might just find yourself trapped in the cycle again. Chapter 23, The Bigger Picture. In the final moments, it becomes painfully clear that the entire system is one giant moral experiment. The boy at the top of the pyramid serves as another test for the prisoners. If you're selfish enough to climb over everyone else to reach the top, you're swiftly thrown back down, proving that greed never leads to salvation. But here's the real twist. The boy himself is a test. Will anyone save him? Or will they prioritize their own survival and ignore him? Enter Miharu. Wow, getting so confused here. The woman from the first film. She suddenly emerges, revealing that she might be part of the system all along, but we are not sure. This revelation flips everything we thought we understood about the situation on its head. Then, just when you think you've got it figured out, the movie throws more questions than answers, leaving the true nature of the system shrouded in mystery. And I think the final scene reveals the futility of trying to escape or change the system. It's an allegory for how deeply entrenched systems of power control us, even when we think we're fighting back. The child symbolizes innocence lost. The question remains, will humanity ever truly escape this endless cycle of exploitation and manipulation? The answer sadly seems to be no, but it's a fight worth having, even if it's a losing battle. Final chapter. Final reflection, the political and cultural message. These scenes serve as a powerful critique of societal systems and the human condition. The characters are trapped in a never-ending cycle of survival, moral choices, and control, mirroring the real-world political struggles where ideals are corrupted by power and those in charge dictate the fate of the powerless. It's a harsh reminder that systems meant to protect can easily become the instruments of oppression. Yet, despite this, there's still room for resistance. Even small acts of defiance are significant. This is the type of rebellion we should all aspire to, fighting with the understanding that change may be impossible, but still standing for what's right is the only thing we can do. And also about the child on floor 333 and the cycle of failure. The final revelation of the Platform 2 is the discovery of a child on floor 333, just like the Platform 1. As the prisoners attempt to reach the child, like Platform 1 and 2 both, and the last scene of the movie itself, the Platform 2, they realize he's a symbol for the next generation, an embodiment of innocence forced to survive in a corrupt system. The film ends with a heartbreaking reminder that the cycle of suffering is far from over, as each new generation is condemned to endure the same brutal system. No matter how many people try to change things, the structure remains. It's a chilling commentary on the endless nature of societal and systematic failure. The child represents hope, but also the inescapable fate of those who come after. In the face of a broken system, innocence is just another victim. The vertical hierarchy of the prison reflects how each generation is bound to repeat the mistakes of the last, passing on their suffering. So, what does the Platform 2 really mean? And I'm not sure. It was very complicated, but at its core, it's a bleak exploration of the human condition, our willingness to endure suffering or constant battles for power and the never-ending struggle to break free from oppressive systems. The film paints a grim picture of how the rules we live by can trap us, turn us against one another, and keep us in a cycle of despair. But within the despair, we also see moments of rebellion, sacrifice, and maybe hope. The Platform 2 forces us to ask the hardest question of all. Is it possible to change the system, or are we all doomed to repeat history? Comment down in the, okay, just let it go. If you're still not sure what this movie's about, just remember, pizza, punishment, and a whole lot of vertical suffering. That's it. If you can survive that, you can survive the Platform 2. So, guys, thank you very much for staying until the end of this very long video. If you have enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss out on more deep dives into your favorite movies and series. And if you have your own theories or interpretations of the Platform 2, drop them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious.